Hello, everyone. Welcome to All In on Real Estate. I'm your host, Aaron Goins. I started this meetup because when I was in the military, no one in my circles talked about real estate. A lot of time we talk about debt and other things like that, but nothing about real estate. So I wanted to start a meetup where people can talk about real estate and start talking about generational wealth for them and their families. So I'm very, very excited for our guest speaker today, Mr. Jeff Greenberg. How you doing, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great today. Thank you.
I met Jeff on Clubhouse. I met Jeff, and we used to had a well, I couldn't go to it, but we had a weekly call that I always had Jeff on. Well, Jeff was always on all the time. He's always giving us knowledge, always always pouring into people. And I always appreciate Jeff for that, man. So I'm just really, really excited to have you on here and to ask you some questions and open some eyes too to people.
Glad to be here, Aaron.
Yeah. So I'm gonna ask you what I ask everybody, Jeff. How did you get started in real estate?
I guess I got started years back, just listening to podcasts. I guess mostly Bigger Pockets back at the time. Actually, before Bigger Pockets, I was listening to the real estate radio guys. They were out of San Jose. They were like the first ones out there. I had not discovered Bigger Pockets yet and started listening to their show, but reading books. Started out looking at bank-owned properties, and the banks back in 2005 really didn't know what to do with all the foreclosures they were getting, and so started out essentially with the residential side of it, and then, as I said, listened to the real estate guys and started getting involved with the commercial real estate.
Cool. So, I mean, there's something when you're listening to the real estate guys and things like that, was something that really got you like thinking, like, man, this is something I can do, or what was the pivot for you?
Well, they had a process where they would interview you, that you would actually go in and they'd give you financial advice. And one of the things they did, and I was going through a divorce, so I had limited funds. And so we sat down and we talked, and they told me that with the money I had, I could go buy a fourplex and then hang on to that fourplex for 3 years, refinance it, take the money out, buy another fourplex, and then take the money out and refinance and get another fourplex. And in about 15 years, I'd be able to get that $10,000 a month that I was looking for. Well, that was going on the assumption that things were always going to go up. And as we know, things weren't always going to go up. In fact, their book, Equity Happens, basically states that it's, everything, your equity is always going to go up. And it was a good thing that I didn't buy into that one because I wanted to go faster. And I didn't buy into it because there was people that over leveraged and got in trouble. So I started looking other directions, and that's when I bumped into a guru that I started following him and reading his books, and actually got some mentoring through that guru.
Oh, cool. That's cool right there. Okay, let me ask you this. It's kind of the same kind of question, but was there a mindset shift for you? Like, man, I can see it. I can see that, man, I can get passive income by doing something.
Well, what the mind shift was that I could use my money for my education and I didn't have to use it to buy the properties, that I could start using other people's money. And learning how to use other people's money is an extremely important lesson, because most of us starting out don't have a lot of our own. Yeah, we could probably buy a house here and there, and maybe a fourplex if we've got enough. But once you learn how to use other people's money and how to leverage that, then you have an unlimited resource. And that was the big key, is using other people's money to invest. That's a great skill to have, no matter what part of the business or other businesses you're in, being able to help other people make money on their money and you leverage their money. That's a great skill to have.
Right. So what was your first investment? in real estate?
The first investment that we bought was a 20-unit property. It was actually 5 fourplexes. We treated it as a 20-unit apartment in Texas. And we raised money for that. We syndicated the deal. We raised money for it. And that was, a tough process trying to raise that money. We raised $350,000. And, I raised about 175. My partner raised about 175. And neither one of us had ever raised money from other people before. So that was a huge project.
So how was that experience? I mean, what was you, was it friends and family you first started off with, or was it total strangers? How was that first, trying to raise capital for that?
That's a funny question, because my partner, hers were all, I don't know if it was family, but it was friends. It was business associates. It was people that she had worked with, her bosses, past employers, all of that. Mine, it wasn't anybody that I didn't know before. It was all people that I had met through meetups, through going to seminars, boot camps, people I had met after I started in real estate, which is interesting. I mean, I didn't have any friends and family in that deal. It was all people that I had met along the way. So it was interesting, because the way that it was just totally different, the way that each of us raised the money.
How did the partnership form?
We met, we were doing the same mentoring program. And as part of the mentoring programs, we were on phone calls every other week or once a month or whatever. And well, wait a minute, let me back up. We had met at a seminar. We actually sat at the same table at a meal, where she became a conversation piece because she was from Alaska. And that was when Sarah Palin was just nominated to be the for the vice presidential campaign. So all of a sudden, everybody was interested in Sarah Palin and at the table. And so we had somebody from Alaska, and we were asking her about Sarah Palin. So that was how we first met. But it wasn't until, say, a year or so later that we kept hearing each other on these calls, because on these calls, we would ask questions and we would be listening to each other and hearing about what other people were doing. And then we finally started basically courting each other, for a partnership. And after about 6 months of long distance phone calls, we decided to try to team up and make a purchase. So we met through basically going through a mentoring program.
That's cool right there. And it's so interesting. I've heard this before, but I tell people, like, don't just be in the back of the room, like make yourself available. And like you said, something stood out about her because it was something going on, but y'all wouldn't know if you didn't know she's from Alaska, so it was a starter right there that taught, her being interested and her having something behind it started your conversation. So I love that.
Yeah, the one thing that I tell people is I would have done it a little differently, because both of us were we were at the same level. And I typically tell people, find somebody to work with that's maybe a few steps ahead of you. You're going to learn a lot faster that way. So even though we had received the education, we still were at the same level and were, kind of learning at the same time. If we had somebody that was more experienced that we were working with, I think that would have been a much better way to go, that we could have learned from them.
So let me ask you this. What was some of your biggest takeaways from your first couple deals? Like, what was your biggest, learning things for you?
Well, first of all, I learned a heck of a lot from her, that we complemented each other very well, that she was very detailed oriented. She was military background, accounting background, attention to detail. I was much more big picture. We could make this work. We could do things, more motivational type of stuff. But it worked out great that way. But what I learned from this particular property is that I needed to buy something with some greater value add than we had. Basically, we bought a 3-year-old property that was 100% occupied. They were already paying electricity, and there was very little upside. It was a great property. It was a super property, but the problem is you need to push something. It was in a slow growth market. We weren't able to really do much on the only rubs we could do was charge for water, which they fought us. It was very difficult to do. And we had a real difficult time increasing the value of the property in order to get a decent a decent profit at the end. So it was a lesson. We learned a lot about property and property management, and we went through 3 property management companies, but we realized that we needed to get something where we could actually add some value. We did raise rents, but it was a real slow process.
So in the early parts of those time frames, was there a book, anything like that you really relied on, maybe the negotiations or something like that really helped you out along your journey?
Well, I mean, the one book that we read, I read years ago was Dave Lindahl's Multifamily Millions. That's a good basic book. In fact, he was our mentor, Dave Lindahl. But I mean, what got me on the path originally, I mean, way back, of course, was Rich Dad, Poor Dad and the Cash Flow Quadrant. Those were instrumental books. But earlier you asked about, the first and second property. Then the second property was a totally different situation. This was a property where there was a lot of value add. And so this one, we were able to increase the value of the property significantly, partially from our doing, increasing the occupancy, increasing the rents, renovating the property, but also we got the advantage of cap rate compression, and so was able to get a phenomenal return for our investors. So we went from a meager return for our investors to a phenomenal return on our investors on the next property.
And this is before the recession, right? Or after the recession?
This was after the recession. The first property we bought in 2010, and we ended up holding on to that for 6 years. So we sold that in about 2016 because we couldn't get the value to get our investors a decent return in year 5, and we kept holding on to it until we were able to get our value. We drew a line in the sand and said, this is what we're going to sell it at, and if we don't sell it at that, we're going to hang on. We actually got the lender to extend a year on the loan and sold it in year 6 to get a decent profit for investors. Then we had bought the property in Houston was 2013, and we sold that one in 3 years because we were able to get a phenomenal profit for our investors in 3 years. My broker say, hey, why don't you sell it? I said, well, wait a minute, our plan is 5 years. And he says, yeah, but I could get you more than what you planned on getting in 3 years. And I could do that in, more than what we had planned on for 5 years. We planned on 5 years. He said, oh, I could do that now. And so I said, okay, if you could get more than what we had expected, go for it. So we figured we bought the property for $1.3 million, planned on selling it for $2.1 million to $2.4 million in 5 years. And instead, in 3 years, he got me $2.7 million.
Wow.
And so he said, yeah, okay. And even though we had to pay a $90,000 prepayment penalty, it didn't matter because we got like $600,000 more than we had planned on in the first place. but that was before prices in Houston started going through the roof.
Right.
Because we bought it at about 21,000 a door, and we sold it for like 35,000 a door. I don't think you're going to find those kind of prices in Houston anymore.
Right. I totally say that right
but
there.
but we thought, hey, our investors made 120% in 3 years, and we thought this is phenomenal. And prices just kept going up and up and up. So that was a good deal.
That's awesome. That's awesome right there. So going along, and I'm setting this up for a later on question, but is there any deals that stood out before 2020 that you'd like to talk about, besides the deals you talked about before earlier?
Before 2020, I mean, I had a couple student housing deals. The last one we bought was the Amarillo deal, which I think we got in 2019. That was an interesting property. We learned a lot from that property too.
Anything to add? I mean, anything to add about that? Anything to talk about that? Or
well, the thing is we really learned about a lot more about due diligence on that property and trust, as far as what the broker has to say, and you learn that you don't believe anything the broker says. You don't believe anything, or you verify anything and everything, and also making sure you get good inspectors to make sure that the inspectors know what the hell they're doing, because we had issues with inspectors not finding things that they should have found. I had a pool inspector out there that gave us a clean bill of health, and before we closed, there was the code guy came in, and code enforcement, and put a bunch of code violations on the pool. And I said, wait a minute, I just had the pool inspector out there, and we still got code violations. Fortunately, it was before we closed, so the seller had to take care of it. But yeah, that was definitely an education, and we went through COVID on that one, on that deal, but came out in the end with a spectacular opportunity. But yeah, there was a lot of things I learned on that, making sure you just get every inspector out there checking everything that you can, especially when you're talking about bigger deals. This was 225 units. There's a lot of zeros behind every mistake.
Good one. I like that one right there. I like that. A lot of zeros behind mistakes. I like that. So now COVID. How has COVID changed your business?
Well, I mean, COVID changed that particular property. I mean, I don't know if we didn't have that much in the way of issues with that particular property, because we found resources to help our tenants out that had problems, that there was local resources to help them pay the rents. We really relied a lot on the community to get donations or to keep people in. So COVID didn't affect us that much on that property. We did have the PPP loan, which paid our payroll for about 3 months. So that was good. We also got the EIDL loan that we were able to pay back at closing. So we were in the process of increasing our occupancy right in the middle of COVID, and it seemed like we just kept moving along, because we bought it at 85%. It dropped down to 66%. And from the beginning, we were just slowly building it back up. And in 2.5 years, we had it at 9.5%, or excuse me, 95% occupancy. And that was even during COVID. So, we had a great team. We had a great team that worked their butts off, and the property management that we had hired did a phenomenal job. And this was, right through COVID.
Any opportunities present itself because of COVID?
I don't know about the opportunities. The team just had the opportunity to show their colors. I'll tell you that, being able to keep the property well occupied and keeping the funds coming up in during COVID. I guess the one opportunity that we had, we were at one point, we were below the debt coverage ratio that we were supposed to keep according to the loan. And because of that, they were going to put us in what they call a lockbox situation. I don't know if you're familiar with that term. Basically, what it is they make you set up a bank account, and all your funds have to go into that bank account, which they control, the lender controls. Then the lender will pay themselves, and then they will, from whatever's left, they will give you money for operations, and they'll decide if they're going to give you anything else, which probably isn't going to be any distributions if you even had enough money left. And if you had any vendors to pay, they would decide whether or not they're going to give you that money. But all of that is going to be under their control. And not only that, it makes it very difficult to, like pay some accounts payable and, this month and pay others next month, when you're hurting for funds coming in. And they were going to put us into a lockbox situation because our occupancy had gone down so low and we were building it back up. Now, COVID stopped. When COVID came through, all of a sudden, we didn't hear anything new about the lockbox situation. So we were just keeping quiet, waiting for the lender to go ahead and say they were going to put it in. But before COVID, they were getting ready to put it in. And so by the time COVID was kind of slowing down, we were ready to sell the property, and we sold it at 95% occupancy for a huge profit. So we didn't have to deal with that situation. But people should be aware and look in their documents. If they've got a lockbox situation, you've got to know what the requirements are. We were constantly bringing in more revenue, but what happens is because we dropped down to the 66% in the beginning, every time the lender would look at the T12, that time that we were way low was killing us. They wouldn't do a T3. They wouldn't look at the current 3 months and say, oh yeah, you're doing real well. They would look at the T12 going all the way 12 months back to when we were hurting and we were underwater. And so every time, no matter how, time was knocking off the earlier months, but it was a slow increase. And so that was hurting us because they were looking back to the entire T12. And we couldn't say, hey, look at the last 6 months or look at the last 3 months to see how well things are going. Things are going great. Say, no. It says we have to look at the entire 12 months. And so they were going to put us in the lockbox, and that was going to really hurt the deal. And not only that, we were going to have to pay them a couple thousand a month for whoever was going to administer the lockbox. So what they were going to do was to hurt the possibility of us being successful. And so that was pretty scary, but we got past it and did great. The investors did very well.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. Been through a few interesting things.
Yeah. And I just love asking investors, guest speakers about their journey, because everybody's a different journey and you can learn so much from every story. And for you, when I met you, I mean, it was always you're pouring into others, you're always giving information like that. What for you made you, sorry about that. What made you want to pour into others and give so much information to others?
Well, I've always enjoyed teaching. Back in my history, I used to teach, computer science, and I always, so always come from a giving background. If I have any knowledge, I'm always happy to share it. And it's very rewarding when I see somebody else gain from my knowledge. So I've always been that way. And that's why I've had, quite a few meetups on my own, always helping to advance anybody that I can. And I really enjoy seeing other people's success, from any knowledge that I can give out. So it's just kind of been my nature. It's been very enjoyable to see people succeed in any way that I can help.
Any success stories from mentoring, anybody that you said, you know what, I really helped that person at some point, and it really came back to, not for yourself, but to see that person grow. It was, achievement to see that person grow.
You mean anybody in particular?
Well, you don't have to say the person's name or something like that, but just saying that you can just give an example of somebody that you poured into and you see the growth in them.
Yeah. There's one guy that's doing some equity raising now. Originally I was teaching him how to invest in multifamily, and he decided to go the equity raise direction. And I don't know how many millions of dollars he's been raising now for the business. Just hugely successful, was able to leave his job and do it full time. But yeah, he was one of the ones. There's others that I hear from. They come back to me, and I don't typically, I'm not even aware of how helpful I was to them. But I've had several people come back to me and I said, thank you for starting me out, and they're off doing their own thing somewhere. So that makes me feel very good. I enjoy it when people are successful because of something I said to them or did or whatever.
Right.
That's always a good feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Where do you want to see yourself in the next 5 years?
Well, one of the things that we didn't touch on is I'm out of acquisitions now, and I'm running two different equity funds. I have a 506B and a 506C equity fund where I'm coming in on a fund-to-fund basis in other people's deals. So both of them could get up to $100 million. I would love to see them, growing quite a bit. My 506B fund, I'm hoping to get, once I get it to $5 million in the fund, it becomes an accredited investor, and I could help non-accredited investors get into deals only open to accredited investors within that fund. So that's one of my goals is right away is to get that to 5 million. And then beyond that, I'd like to get it up to 100 million on each of those different funds. So that's essentially my goal right now, is to help get into quality deals and work with high quality deal sponsors. I decided that I wasn't excited about being the operator. I saw other great operators and great asset managers work, and I'm working with them now and letting them run the deal. And I come in on the equity side and help to bring in partners into the deal. So I'm having a lot more fun doing that.
What started with you with funds? I know you kind of explained, but what kind started you starting funds?
What pushed me into starting the funds?
Yes.
Well, the deal that we were talking about a little while ago that had all the issues, I was going to hire an asset manager, but she didn't want to be an employee. She wanted to be on the GP side. So I brought her in on the GP side, and I saw what she was doing and how well she did it and what she did to that property. With all the problems we had, I saw how she ran the property, good times and bad times. And I said, this is what I want to do, is to work with somebody like her. And I decided I just wanted to be on the passive side and get in with somebody like her and find more quality people like that. And so I've raised money for 2 of her deals, and I've raised money for other deals of other people of high quality that I want to work with. And the main thing is I didn't want to, I would rather stay off the GP side, because when you're raising equity on the GP side, you have to take on additional responsibilities and jobs, and you have to stay compliant. I didn't like the idea of seeing deals with a lot of people in it. You know, you see people with 8 GPs or something, you know, you could have a compliance issue, and I didn't want to be involved with that. So I figured, okay, I'm going to just raise money in a fund, and we're going to invest in those deals, and we're just on the LP side. So we're taking care of our own compliance, and we don't have to deal with what's going on the GP side.
I like that. I like it. I like it. This is another avenue to show that you don't have to. It's just another avenue. I can go on and on about that, but it's another avenue. I like it, and I like how you explain it too in your reasoning. So anything that you would like to say before I close it down, ask for, audience to ask you questions. Anything you would like to tell somebody who's just starting off in real estate?
Well, just starting off in real estate, you've got to, educate yourself first. There are so many podcasts out there. There's a lot of great books. You have to decide if you want to be an active or passive investor. A lot of people start out passive investing in deals, and then they want to become active, and that's fine. But you could learn as a passive investor, what it takes to run the deals. And then eventually people want to get in on the GP side, maybe as a minor player on the GP side. Maybe they found the deal, or maybe they're doing some due diligence, or maybe they're doing broker relationships, or maybe they're bringing money in, whatever it is that they can bring to the party. And then eventually they start doing their own deals. I went a little bit differently. I mean, I did start out as a passive investor in some deals, but I jumped right in as the main GP. I was never a minor GP. I went in as the main GP running the show. And now I'm going the opposite direction, that I don't want to be on the GP side. I want to find people that I can trust and let them run the show. I don't need to run the show. So you kind of figure out where you want to be and start hanging out with people that are doing what you want to do, and find a way of being some kind of service to them. If you want to be a main GP, you find out, what do they need help with? How can I help you? I just want to be around you so I could learn from you. And I think that's typically the best way to get into the business. Find out what, who's doing what, network, meet a lot of people, see who you relate to, and see who you can work with. That's my big thing on somebody starting out. And network, meet lots of people.
All right, absolutely, absolutely. And just one last question: where do you think real estate is going? As far as, it's never going away, but is it a trend that you see that is happening in real estate?
Right now, I think there's going to be a lot of distressed debt coming up. So there may be a lot of distressed operations. That doesn't mean distressed properties. The property could be in great shape. It could be a 95% occupied. It could be a great deals. But the thing is people got variable debt. They're maybe in trouble. Maybe they're not going to be able to sell it for what they need to pay off their debt. My granddaughter's popping in here. So there's going to be opportunities. So I think people need to keep an eye out for those opportunities. I think there's going to be opportunities to get good deals on property. I stay away from variable debt right now. I won't touch it. I want to. Can I stay with you? Yes, yes, go. Anyway, I stay away from the variable debt right now. I want to make sure that I'm looking at fixed rate loans. I'm looking at sponsors that have been through a few things, that they have sufficient reserves, that they're not over leveraged. There is a possibility that we're going to see decreases in occupancy. There's good possibilities that we're not going to be able to raise rents. We may even end up dropping rents. I want to see underwriting that is in reality conservative, and that it is prepared for a downturn. If we don't get more of a downturn and things work out great, fantastic. But I want some conservative underwriting with financial reserves, low break-even occupancy. I was brought a property that somebody said the break-even occupancy, well, they said in year 3, it was going to be 95%. And I said, what? Because they were underwater in the beginning to begin with. And it was going to take them to year 3, and they were going to be about 95% break-even occupancy. And I said, I'm out of here. I'm out of here. I had no interest in that. But if your break-even occupancies and maybe 70%, maybe you have low leverage at 60%. I'm looking at people doing 58%. I saw someone doing 50% leverage. I mean, it's hard to make the numbers work with that low leverage on your loans, but that's protecting you. I want to know how my investment is being protected. And if you could protect my investment and still show some numbers that we're going to make some money, because secondary, I want to make some money. Primary, I want to know how you're protecting my money and my investors' money.
Right.
And that's the first thing. How are you protecting my money and my investors' money? And then after that, we could talk about how you're projecting that we're going to make some money.
Okay, and this is my final question. It's kind of out the box question, but this is our time and age. I know a lot of us invest into the South, especially the Southeast. In Texas and things like that. Do you think now, with how the climate change has been, that you had to start underwriting with something like that, as far as potentially climate change, especially in like Florida's? I mean, you start to see more bad weather in Texas. Is something that you think investors need to be doing?
Well, you need to be concerned about insurance. I mean, insurance is crazy. I've seen, phenomenal changes on insurance policies, but yes, I would be concerned about where you're buying. There's places in Florida, that, and even in Texas and other states, where they do have severe weather conditions. So yeah, you have to be concerned about that. I mean, there's, you also got in California out here, I mean, we've got earthquakes, but that's everywhere in California. Yeah, certainly insurance is one of the things that you definitely have to be concerned with. And that's something you're going to have to budget for, or you're going to have to look somewhere else. It definitely is a concern. When we bought in Houston, that property that I told you about that we did very well on, we budgeted. I think the guru that I was training with said, okay, $250 a door is what you should, rule of thumb, put in there for insurance. And so we knew Houston had a lot of rain, so we said, okay, we're budgeting for $500 a door, and that's what we put in our budget, assuming that we would do better than that. Well, when we closed, the insurance was $1,100 a door, because we were within 25 miles of saltwater, is what they said, and one part of our building was a foot in the flood zone. So $1,100. Now later we renegotiated, we got another insurer, and we got it down to $800 a door. But if that was not a phenomenal deal to begin with, we would have had to walk away from it. But it ended up going from a phenomenal deal to a good deal. It was still a good deal, but if it was started out as a good deal, it probably would have killed it. So insurance costs are extremely important. Making sure you get an insurance quote while you're doing your due diligence is extremely important. Yeah, no, climate change, insurance costs are going crazy, and especially in certain areas. And that property didn't flood the whole time we owned it, but it did flood six months after we sold it.
Wow.
The entire it was a 2-story property, and the entire bottom story was flooded out. Now the only thing is 6 months later, the guy that had bought it from us was selling the property for about another $1 million above what he paid us for it, because he had a whole new bottom floor. The entire floor was redone because of the flood, and now he was selling it, for a lot more money. So he didn't get hurt either. He had good insurance coverage, so that's important.
Right. Okay. Well, man, Jeff, man, thank you so much, man. You answered. I think you provided so much knowledge and just going over your story, and the gems you thought and made you really think about things too. And I like, especially the mindset about having that fun and everybody had to be a GP. So definitely love that. But I'm going to open up for questions. And Lawrence is going to take over for a minute and ask a question, direct us for a minute, step away.
Okay.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you.
Hey, Lawrence.
Hey, Jeff, thank you again, man. That was a fantastic presentation. I have a question for you. You talked about, mentorship and starting out a mentorship. Do you find that it's important to get a mentor in the beginning?
Well, it depends. I mean, there's a difference between, say, a paid mentor and a non-paid mentor. If you can find somebody that, as I said earlier, that's doing what you want to do, and you can find some way of being some kind of service to them. And that may be that you're making phone calls for them, or, doing research online, or maybe you happen to live in an area that's a great area that you got boots on the ground. That's another way of paying for a mentorship. So some type of mentorship, it doesn't have to be paid. I mean, it could be something, it could be sweat equity, doing something, but being around somebody that's where you want to get to, I think is going to accelerate your learning curve beyond the books and the podcast. The paid mentors, they could give you a lot of training, but that's not really hands-on. I believe in apprenticeships, and if you could go in and say, hey, look, I don't care what I get paid, or I'm not going to get paid at all. I just want to be around you, and I'll do anything you want me to do to help out in the process. I think that's probably the best way to learn. You're muted, Lawrence.
Anybody has a question?
What's that?
I was asking anybody has a question? Nicole? I see the wheels turning. I know you.
I came in too late to have a question, honestly. Sorry. I was trying to find the right link.
Well, anything you want to ask about multifamily or private equity funds, or anything you have on there, I'll be glad to answer. Nothing comes to mind, huh?
I mean, I probably could have 50 million questions about funds and raising capital. I guess your best tips for raising capital to new syndicators?
The best tip I have on that is networking. Meet a lot of people. First, get yourself educated as far as the business. And as you're learning different things, share those with other people. share that, hey, I'm learning this. This is a great business. I've just learned this. Constantly sharing your journey. And if you're able to get into groups of people that have money, to be talking to them, create a sample package of what you think a deal would look like, and say, here, I've learned all about this, that this is what a deal would look like. If I find a property like this is the kind of returns I'm expecting. And you show it to people, says, wow, do you think, would you be interested in something like this? If I found something like this, is this something that you might be interested in? But talking to people and letting people know what you're doing is probably the key to getting people on your list. And that's what you want to do, is get them on your list and let them know what you're doing. So, wow, I went to this seminar and I met these people, and this is what we talked about, and this is what I learned, and constantly warming people up to the possibility of investing with you. And there's going to be people out there that says, oh, I won't go near real estate. My parents lost their money in real estate, or no, I'll keep my money in stocks or whatever. And, that's okay. There's going to be plenty of people out there. But when you talk to somebody and say, wow, that's interesting, they go and they say, wow, that's interesting. Maybe they want to learn a little bit more, you could talk some more about, but show that you're getting yourself educated in the business is the key, because they need to trust you. If you're going to raise money, they have to trust you and trust your knowledge of the business to be able to protect their money. And that's critical. They got to know, like, and trust you. And if you don't get yourself educated, then why are they going to trust you?
I like that KLT part. Know, like, and trust.
Yeah, it's a know, like, and trust. If they got to know you first, then they've got to like you, and then they have to trust you before they're going to let you touch their money. You just walk in the door and say, hey, I got this great deal. It's going to give you 20% return or whatever, but they don't know who the heck you are. Why are they going to trust you?
Right.
Why are they going to let you do anything with their money? So it's a warm-up period. I mean, there's times I've had people come up to me that I've known for years, and all of a sudden, out of the blue, they go and they say, hey, let me know when the next opportunity comes up. I've been talking to them for years, and I've been touching them for years, or maybe I've been sending out newsletters or whatever. And all of a sudden they say, hey, let me know. My brother-in-law was one of those. That, I talked about real estate over and over again. He was almost coming into one deal, and I just stopped talking to him about it. I never brought it up again to him. And at a family event, he came over to me, says, hey, let me know when the next opportunity comes up. And I said, okay. So I got him into the next opportunity. But other than that, you never know. And there's other people I know, 3 years they come up. Oh, let me know what the next opportunity is. But you just have to keep letting people know what you're doing. Otherwise, obviously they don't know. They don't know what you're doing.
So I have a question for you. You have a question, Trevor? You muted.
I'm good. I was
Okay.
just going to ask where his hot tub is, but that's a silly question.
Where my hot tub and my sauna is out in the back. I built a
Nicole,
sauna
just
too,
so
right?
you know the joke, I've been on several meetups where Jeff has showed up in his hot tub. So it's just kind of a funny joke.
Yep.
I want to get on Jeff's level. I need a hot tub and sauna out back.
I got the hot tub it's a wood burning sauna. I go from my hot sauna to my hot tub, and if I can, I take meetings from there or whatever. But yeah.
Ooh, that's the life.
That I'm living the life. And then I'll go, if it's summer, I'll jump into the pool. We've got a pool also. So I'm living the life, and I got my grandkids hanging around. So I'm living the life.
Living life.
So what do you got, Lawrence?
Jeff, you just said about, when you meet somebody, let them know what's going on, right? So I had talked to my dentist, not my dentist, my eye doctor last year, a few years ago, right? So this year I had talked about some deal I had and it fell through. And then he said, well, really? So he kept on asking me a lot of questions. He says, well, I'd be interested, right? So what do you do with somebody that's like the first time to come on that is the same thing? You talk about the deal, like you said, have a little, show them a little deal. If this is something you like, or you take them out to find out more about him first? How would you do that?
Well, I mean, I would start educating them on the business. I mean, and like I said, you could have a sample deal that, it could be somebody else's deal. It could be just a deal that you made up, but a sample deal package just to let them know what it might look like. And that way you're warming them up to the idea that if you do find a deal, that they've already sounded interested. I was doing a similar thing to a podiatrist. I had some foot surgery and he sounded very interested. And so I got him on my mailing list and, would send out educational information to him, and keeping in touch was the big thing. And he was getting ready to invest. And then his son, I think, just graduated college, and he decided to put all his money in to pay off the son's college debt. And I'm sitting there, man. But the thing is that was the way, is if you put out a newsletter that's putting out some educational stuff, so you're consistently touching them. You don't want to just touch people when you're trying to raise money. You want to touch them all the time and let them know, what's going on. Do some research, educational value, so they understand what's happening. With the doctors, know some of their pain points. I recently went to a conference of doctors that are interested in real estate, and just listening to the people up on stage talking about the pain points that they were going through. As far as doctors, the way they make more money is working harder. They typically, if they don't work more hours, they don't make more money. Right. And, that's something, wow, I didn't really even think about that. They're just they may be 1099 workers, or they may be W-2, but the only way is to do more. And so they're working hard for their money, but you need to talk to them about, hey, what about the money you make? Yes, you're right about the taxes. How do they well, the problem is passive losses don't go against active income, but it does go against the passive income. But the thing is to get their money to work harder. So the money that they do make, because they're high income earners, is to help them do something with their passive, with their extra money. And then hopefully they could cut back on working. A lot of doctors love what they do. Doctors, dentists, they love what they do, but they would like to do it because they love doing it, not because they have to make more money. So if they could cut back on their time, and because of their passive income, that's certainly something a lot of them are interested in. A lot of them, I've met a lot that would like to get out of the medical practice. A lot of them just would like to reduce their time and not have to work so hard. And if you could show them a way to take their extra money and put it into an investment that's going to get those kind of cash flows, that will help them do that. I think that's a great way to go.
So I got to run, but I'm glad I could get to say hi to everybody.
Hey, Trevor, good seeing you.
Good to see you, Trevor.
I'm sure I'll see you around.
Take care.
Oh, look who's here. How are you doing, Chantel?
She showed up just to say goodbye to me.
I've been here.
She's been hiding in the background.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I'm happy to share.
Well, I'll say this. I mean, you can still answer questions afterwards, but I just want to say thank you once again, Jeff. Awesome. Answering questions, like I said, sharing your story. I really appreciate that. Man, I'm excited. I'm excited. I'm excited for your funds. I'm really excited for the funds and seeing how it grows and how it's going to help others along your journey in the next couple of years, man. So I mean, more, I would say, earnest opportunity for you, and like I said, bring people along. It's always a great thing. So, man, just thank you so much, man. Thank you for being an awesome guest speaker on here.
Thank you. And I have a freebie for your audience, whoever watches this this recording. I have an ebook on what questions to ask a deal sponsor before you get into a deal as a passive investor. But what it also is it's questions to think about if you are the deal sponsor, what kind of things that your passive investors may want to know about you. So it's a good idea to think about these things if you're going to be either on the GP side or on the LP side. So you could get that at sigcre.com/sponsor. And it's questions to ask the deal sponsor. And as I said, it's great for either the active or the passive investor. Okay, sigcre.com/sponsor.
Okay. All right. We will.
All right.
Do this in the meeting minutes, on the YouTube page. So it's going to come up tonight. The YouTube page will be on tonight. So if anybody wants to watch the replay of this, you can see it tonight. So, man, thank you, Jeff. I'm gonna sign off, but thank you everyone who's coming. I hope to see you next month. I have two great guests that I know personally that will be the guest speakers. So I look forward to having them both on here. So I want to say thank you. God bless you and take care.